This conference will now be recorded.
In yesterday's session, we were discussing about what is NFS. And how to set up NFS and how we can use NFS as a volumes for our pods. Yesterday, I created a NFS server in which I have installed NFS. In our pod manifest, I was using NFS value. Okay. So if you see, one second, I deployed some application that is not working. Let's delete that. Now, if you see, this database pod has been created using this NFS server. Okay. Now, this is NFS server IP. This is the path which I am trying to use in NFS server, and I am trying to mount with this one. Now, if I describe the pod, that database pod, we can see that it is using NFS value. It is using NFS value. Now, even though pod is getting restarted, let me access my application. Let me access my application. Let me access my application. One second. On this port, my application is running. Now this application is accessing, it is talking to the database. Database is basically using NFS pod, NFS value. So database is running in Kubernetes, but the data is getting actually maintained in which server, which storage? The database pod. Database process is running in Kubernetes, but the database process is the database pod is mounted with NFS storage. So that NFS data is getting persisted in the NFS storage. Now my database pod is running in this server 93. Even though that pod shifted to other node, will it be a problem now? I'm intentionally deleting the pod. I'm intentionally deleting the pod. Now, if the pod is shifted to other node, if the pod is shifted to other node, let's assume, let me delete multiple times. If that can be moved to other node, it is not moving. If I stop the way I have done, even though the pod is moved to other node, there won't be any issue because the database is using NFS values, right? So this is the data basically sitting in a different storage, different server. Process is running in Kubernetes, but the data is in a different storage, right? Network storage. That can be any storage like cloud storage also. Now, in Kubernetes, we have another very important concept called persistent values and persistent value claims, and a concept of storage class. Concept of storage class. Okay. So, what is this persistent value? What is this persistent value? What is this persistent value claim? Right. So, Nitin is saying, but NFS is not good for security option for database. Why it is not a good option? Because you have you have your NFS server in your own data center within your network. You are applying, data security. You can apply data security. You can apply network security, right? All those things can be followed if you want to use. Otherwise, you can go for a cloud storage if your infrastructure is using cloud in the cloud, right? So volume can be anything. That can be cloud storage, that can be NFS storage, right? You have a security mechanisms in the place which can secure your servers. You can secure your data. You can use some encryption mechanism. You can encrypt and maintain the data at rest. All those stuff. So Arvind is asking, can we mount S3 bucket as a volume? S3 bucket is good for an object storage, not for a block storage or file storage. Not for a file storage or block storage, right? It's an object storage. We can do that, but it is not ideal candidate for this requirement. Now, very important concept in Kubernetes values are persistent values, persistent value claims. So as of now, I'm directly mounting my values to my pods. Is Kubernetes is maintaining that information, that value information outside of your pod lifecycle? The way Kubernetes is maintaining your pods deployment information, is it maintaining volumes information as of now? What type of volume has been used, right? And is it maintaining any information the way it is maintaining pods information? No. Now, in Kubernetes, it is recommended to use a persistent values. Instead of directly using values in your pod manifest, in Kubernetes, there is a concept called persistent value. That persistent volume also is nothing but a piece of storage, piece of disk. Instead of using volumes like this directly, right? Kubernetes recommended to use persistent values, and we can use that value from our pods using persistent value claim. So what is that persistent value? So persistent value is again a piece of storage, disk in the cluster, a piece of storage, basically a disk. So persistent value provides storage resources to the pods. Persistent value provides storage resources, storage to your pods. So in simple term, persistent value you can think as a disk. Persistent value in simple, just to understand the concept very simple, persistent value can be considered as a disk. That can be a local disk, that can be a network disk, that can be a cloud disk. Persistent value is nothing but a storage. So this persistent value exists independently from the pods that consume these values. The persistent value exists independently from your pod that is consuming your value, right? Meaning that even though you deleted the pod and the controller completely, even though you deleted the pod and the managing controller, suppose you are using value for Mongo database pod, and if you delete the pod and its controller, kind of a deployment or replica set, still the volume information will be still available in the cluster. The persistent values exist independently from pods. Even though pod is deleted and the controller is deleted, the storage, the value will remain intact in the cluster. Volume information will be still available in the cluster. Now, if you see, as of now, am I having any persistent value in the short form? PV in the short form. What PV stands for? Persistent values. Do I have any persistent values as of now? Are persistent value claims as of now? No. But I'm still using values. I'm still using values, normal value. I'm directly mentioning what type of storage I want to use here. I'm directly mounting that storage here. I'm not using persistent value. Now, if I delete this controller also completely, if I delete this application completely, does Kubernetes has any information about that value? Now, I deleted that pod, that controller. I'm directly using values. Does Kubernetes is having any information about that storage, whatever I was using? No, right? So instead of using values directly, it is recommended to use values, persistent values for your pods, so that the persistent value exists independently from your pod lifecycle. Persistent value can be provisioned in two ways. Persistent value can be provisioned in two ways. Persistent values can be created in two ways: static values, dynamic values. Persistent values can be created in two ways: static values and dynamic values. So what is the meaning of static value? That is one Kubernetes resource again. That value, that persistent value is nothing but one Kubernetes resource. What is the meaning of static value? Static value means Kubernetes administrator creating that value manually in the cluster, creating a volume manually in the cluster, which means manually you are creating that Kubernetes object, volume object. What is the meaning of dynamic volumes? What is the meaning of dynamic volumes? Dynamic storage. So if pod is requiring, if pod is requesting some value, if pod is requesting some value, the Kubernetes itself will automatically create that storage, create that value. So dynamic values are nothing but, in some circumstances, if a pod require a value and the value doesn't exist in the cluster, if some circumstances, if pod is looking for some value and in the cluster we don't have that value, in those cases, it is possible that Kubernetes can create a value if required, if we configure the storage class. If we have a storage class, that storage class can create a value dynamically. So values can be created in two ways. Static values, that persistent values can be created in two ways: static values and dynamic values. So static value in the sense, as a Kubernetes administrator, we can manually create that value so that pods can consume that value. Pods can take that value. Dynamic values in the sense, if you don't have a value but pods are requesting some value, in that scenario, if there is a storage class configured, that storage class can create the value for us. Okay. Now, the way we have a persistent value, we have a persistent value claim. Persistent value claim. So what is this persistent value claim? So when your pod requires a value, can we directly attach values to our pods, persistent values? If suppose I am planning to go for a persistent values in my pod manifest, can I directly attach my persistent values? No. So it is something like this. This is my Kubernetes cluster, let's say. This is my Kubernetes cluster, let's say. Now I am planning to deploy one pod. I am planning to deploy one pod. That pod requires a value. That pod requires a value. So as a Kubernetes administrator, as a Kubernetes admin, let's say, as a Kubernetes admin, I created a persistent value in my Kubernetes cluster. I created a PV in my Kubernetes cluster. As a Kubernetes admin, I created this one. Kubernetes admin created static value, which means manually. Now my pod requires this value. Can it be directly attached? Does this pod can directly attach this value? No. So when we create a value, right? When we create a value, we will say this value is 1 GB size. This value is of there are access modes. I will come to that. There are access modes. This value is created using this access mode, read write once. I'll come to that in a second. So as a Kubernetes admin, I created a value with 1 GB capacity and access mode as read write once. Now some pod requires a value, then this pod has to request the value using persistent value claim. They have to create a claim like your insurance claim. So suppose you have an insurance. If something happens, are you going to claim your insurance like this much damage has happened, right? I need this much amount, like that. Similarly, we have a storage, persistent value. If this pod requires storage, it has to create a claim saying that I need, let's say 500 MB of disk, 500 MB of storage. I need that volume should be read write once, access mode, something like this. So the pod has to create a claim. The pod has to create a claim. Then does Kubernetes will allocate some PV to this claim? Suppose I have a lot of volumes created. Suppose I have a volume, this type of volume created. Read, write many. I have a different access mode. I have two volumes created like this. Now one pod requires a volume storage. They will create a claim. In that case, does Kubernetes will allocate volume to this claim based on this requirement, based on whatever volumes we have? Is it going to map one volume to this claim? Suppose this pod is requesting I need this much memory, this much storage and this access mode. In my Kubernetes cluster, I have these volumes. So does Kubernetes will assign some PV to this PVC? I am requesting 500 MB read write once. So access mode is matching, read write once. And also this is created with 1 GB capacity, but I am requesting 500 MB. That is fine. But is it going to allocate this PV for this PVC? Is it going to allocate this PV even though this PV is available, this volume is available? Is it going to allocate for this PVC? If you see, access modes are not matching. The claim is not matching, right? So we have a volumes. If any pod requires a value, what they need to request, how they can request a value? If they need any persistent value, what they need to create? They need to create a claim, persistent value claim. These volumes, as I already told, how many ways we can create a volumes in Kubernetes? Two. One is static volume in the sense manually the Kubernetes admin will create. Dynamic volume in the sense I don't have any volumes available, but some pod is requesting, some pod is claiming I need value. I don't have any volumes created, but some pod is requesting the value. In that case, if there is a storage class configured, that storage class is nothing but a provisioner. The storage class is nothing but a provisioner. It is going to provision the storage dynamically. Is it, it is going to create a storage or provision the storage dynamically. So if I have a storage class configured, then if this claim is not able to find any value, the storage class will create a value. The storage class will create a value for us dynamically. Let's assume I don't have a storage class. I don't have a storage class. I don't have a provisioner. That can be any storage class. That can be any provisioner. That can be a NFS provisioner. That can be a EBS provisioner. That can be a EFS provisioner. That can be Azure disk, Azure file provisioner. Suppose if I don't have any storage class, provisioner is configured in my cluster. In that case, if I don't have a values and if I don't have a storage class also, does this claim will get any value? Does this claim will get any value? No. If this claim doesn't get any value, if this claim doesn't get any value, does the pod will be created? Does the pod will be created? If this claim doesn't get any value, the pod will be in a pending state. So in that case, if I don't have a storage class, do I need to have a values created upfront so that whoever requires a values, they can claim? As a Kubernetes admin, do I need to create a values upfront if I don't have a storage class configured? If I don't have a storage class configured, I need to create a values upfront so that whoever requires a value, they can claim the value. So we have two things, as I already told: persistent values, persistent value claims. So persistent value claims. As I already told, right? Persistent value is nothing but a piece of storage. That can be a local storage, that can be a network storage, that can be a cloud storage, right? So it's a piece of storage in the cluster, provisioned in the sense created by administrator manually or dynamically using storage class. So that storage class is nothing but a plugins, guys, volume plugins or volume plugins. That storage class is nothing but a some kind of a code, some kind of an application. It will create a storage for us in the cloud or NFS, something like that. So PVC, the way we have a PV, we have a PVC. What is that PVC? PVC is a request for a storage. PVC is a request for a storage from the pod. PVC is a request for a storage from the pod. So whatever pod requires a value, what they need to do? Whatever pod requires a value, what they need to do? They need to create a claim, what they need, how much storage they need. They have to claim so that Kubernetes will assign some value. So that Kubernetes will assign some value for that claim based on whatever specifications they are mentioned, right? So when I create a pod, I need to create a one more resource. If I really need a persistent value, when I create a pod, along with pod, what is the one more object I need to create? I need to create one more object called PVC, persistent value claim. Persistent value claim. So if I have a value available in my Kubernetes cluster, then the Kubernetes will allocate that value for this claim. The Kubernetes will allocate that value for this claim. Then this pod is going to use this value. This pod is going to use this value. Suppose if this value is not available and if the storage class is also not available, then does pod becomes to the running state or pod will be in a pending state? Pod will be in a pending state. So as of now, if you see, do I have any volumes available? Do I have any volume claims available? And since this is a self-managed Kubernetes cluster, am I getting any storage class? Storage class is nothing but a provisioner which can provision the storage for us, which can automatically create a storage for us. Do I have any storage class configured? Since this is a default, I mean to say self-managed Kubernetes cluster. So we don't have any storage class. But if I go for a managed Kubernetes clusters, if I go for a managed Kubernetes clusters like EKS or AKS or GKE or COPS, if I create a Kubernetes cluster, EKS cluster or AKS cluster or GKS cluster or the Kubernetes cluster using COPS, in that case, we will have some default storage classes. When I go for a AWS EKS, what will be the storage class which will be configured by default? AWS Elastic Block Store, which means EBS storage class. EBS storage class. In that case, whoever requires a value, if they just create a claim, what type of value will be created dynamically for that pod? Whoever requested a claim, and even though there is no value available, if I create a EKS cluster, this is the storage class. In that case, does that storage class will create a EBS storage in the cloud? Is it going to create a EBS storage for that pod? And is it going to allocate that EBS value for that claim? Right? Automatically, the EBS will be created in the cloud. That storage class will create automatically in the cloud. If I go for a AKS, there will be a Azure file or Azure disk storage class. If I go for a GKE, Google persistent disk storage class. If I have a storage class, even though values are not available, if some parts are requesting a value, does values will be created automatically? Does parts will be in a pending state? If I have a storage class configured in my cluster, as a Kubernetes admin, do I need to create a values manually if I have a storage class set up in the cluster? If I have a storage class set up in the cluster, I no need to manually create the values. Okay. So we have a persistent value, claims. If you don't have a values available for claims, the storage class can create the value if you have a storage class configured. At high level, is everyone clear, guys? What is storage class? What is persistent values and what is persistent value claims? Yes. Now, the flow will be something like this. I want a value. First, one pod requires a value. Do I need to create that one PVC object? The way I am creating a deployment, the way I am creating pod, we need to create a PVC. So that PVC will look for a value. It will look for a value. Now, in case of static, right? In case of static, which means if I don't have this PV, does pod will be coming into the running state? If I don't have a PV and I don't have a storage class, no. So in that case, do I need to first have a PV, persistent value, available for this requirement? Yes. But if it is a storage class configured, can I directly, I will request PVC. If the PVC is not able to find any PV, who is going to create this PV automatically? The storage class. The storage class will create. It will just create. The storage class will create. But again, who will allocate that value? Again, does Kubernetes will allocate that value? I mean to say, value will be created by storage class. But who will allocate that value, that persistent value to that PVC again? The storage class will create a value. That is fine. That can be any value. Once that is created, again the Kubernetes will allocate. That value. Okay. So storage class is just creating this value automatically. Storage class is just, it is going to create the value automatically whenever there is no value available. Now we have a access modes, life cycle of a value and claim. As I already told, how many ways we can provision the values. I already discussed this: static values and dynamic values. So now, how can I use this value? How can I use this value? Any use cases for static or dynamic? There is no use case. You need a value. That is your use case. You need a value. That is your use case. You can go for a persistent value. Persistent value claim. Persistent value can be created in two ways: static, dynamic. Suppose I don't want any manual intervention. I am deploying lot of applications in my cluster. I don't want to manually create values and manually delete values whenever I don't need anymore. I don't want to manually manage the storage for my cluster or storage for my pods. I don't want to manage manually values. Basically, values are nothing but a storage for your pods. I don't want to manually create and delete whenever I want, whenever I don't want. Suppose some application team is deploying values. I mean to say, some application team is deploying pods. They are creating a PVC, but they don't have a values. They don't have access to create the values. They cannot decide what type of volume they need. I mean to say, whether they can use local storage, network storage, or cloud storage. They can just request a PVC, but there is no volumes available. In that case, does pods will be scheduled? If you don't have a storage class, no. In that case, as a Kubernetes admin, if I don't want to manage volumes manually, can I configure a storage class of my choice? Can I configure a storage class of my choice based on your infrastructure? In that case, if anyone is requesting a value, does the storage class will create a value automatically and it will allocate that value for your pods? Yes. So in cloud, if I am going for a managed Kubernetes like AKS, EKS, GKE, EKS will be integrated with other cloud services like storage also. So does it automatically provision the volumes? Does it automatically provision the storage for your pods if I have a storage class in that cluster? Yes. So which one will be helpful? Now you can think, which one will make it easy for you to manage the storage for your cluster? The dynamic, basically the storage class, right? So that is based on your use case. Based on your use case, based on your requirement only, you are going to have all these things. There is no term called real time. Sir, how do you do in the real time? I don't like that word real time. There is nothing called real time. Everything is a requirement. You do whatever you want to do as per your best practices. You need to follow the best practices and also you implement that requirement. Okay. So we can go for a storage class if you don't want to manually manage the values. Okay. Now, if I want to, if my pod requires a value, what object needs to be created? As I told, we need to create a claim. Pod uses claims as a value. Pod uses claims as a values. So the Kubernetes will inspect the claim and it will bound some value. It will allocate some value to that pod. So in my pod manifest, in that case, how can I use, if I want to use persistent values and claims, can I directly use something like this, the way I have used? If I want to go for persistent values, can I use something like this here, NFS, host path, EBS directly? NFS, EBS, host path, can I use like this directly here? No. Here, instead of that, what we are going to have basically, we are going to use this one, persistent value claim. Persistent value claim. Persistent value claim. Let me show that. Something like this. We are not going to directly mention, something like this, persistent value claim. So again, is this persistent value claim, persistent value, is all are again Kubernetes resources or objects here? Yes, it's an object. So I'm just saying persistent value claim, persistent value claim. Here I will say claim name. I'll say claim name. Something like this. Something like this. Mongo PVC. I'm just giving the claim name, but did I created a claim with this name where I need to mention how much storage I need, what type of storage I need? I have not mentioned. So without creating this claim object, if I deploy, again will it work? If I directly deploy now, again will it work? No. So who needs to create a claim? Does administrator will create a claim, or the guy who is deploying, the guy who is managing this application needs to create a claim? Not admin, right? The guy who is deploying, that application team, because they know what type of storage they need for this application. They know what type of storage they need. They know how much data they need. Who is going to create a claim? The way they are creating a deployment, the way we are creating a service, they need to mention how much data they need. In that case, do they need to create a one more object like this? The way we have a service, similarly, there is a one more object. They need to create a claim with this name. So without creating a claim, if they apply, does pod will go to pending state saying that no persistent value available with this name? I mean to say no persistent value claim available with this name. So they are going to get that message. Now we have to create a persistent value claim. Before they create a persistent value claim, let's understand the access modes. Let's understand the access modes and reclaim policies. Reclaim policies. This is also very important in persistent value claims concept. So access modes, they have these access modes. So RWO, RWX, ROX in the short form. In the full form, read, write once, read, write many, read only many, read only many. So read, write once. If I am requesting persistent value in the claim with this access mode, read, write once, what does it mean? What is the meaning of read, write once? Only one node, one pod, one node can use that value. If I want to use same value for two pods, two replicas, three replicas, which are running in multiple nodes, does this type of access mode supports that requirement? I'm creating a three replicas of my pod. I'm creating a three replicas of my pod, and all the pods are running in a different nodes. In that case, if I try to use this type of value, does it work? No, it won't work. So read write once, in the sense, read write once, the access modes are important here. Access modes. So let me click on this access modes. So we have a read write once. So what does it mean, read write once? The value can be mounted as a read and write by a single node. By a single node. Read write access nodes can be still allowed multiple pods, but all those pods should be running on same node. If I am using read write once access mode, the value can be mounted as a read only by a single node. But read write once access mode can still allow multiple pods to access, but does all those pods should be running in a same node? Yes. So read write once, in the sense, only from one node we can mount the value to the pod. What is the meaning of read only many? What is the meaning of read only many? The name itself is saying read only values. Sometimes in the interview also they will ask, what is read only values? What is the meaning of read only values? Read only, in the sense, it can only read the data from that storage, but does pod can write the data to that storage? If it is a read only value, pod, your container, can read the data from that value, preloaded data, existing data or preloaded data to that storage. It can read that data, but does pod have a permissions to write the data to that value if it is a read only? No. So read only many, which means the value can be mounted as read only by many nodes, kind of a shared value. Shared value. What is the meaning of read write many, guys? What is the meaning of read write many? Multiple nodes, multiple pods. That value can be mounted parallelly. Same value can be mounted parallel to the multiple pods. Now, does all these access modes will be supported by all the storages? I can go for a host path value. I can go for a host path value, or I can go for a NFS value. I can go for a EBS value. That persistent value can be EBS. That persistent value can be NFS. That persistent value can be host path. That persistent value can be Azure disk. Does it mean all these access mode supports? All these access modes will be supported by all these values? No, right? So example of ROX, what does it mean? Basically, read only many. Suppose you have some preloaded data. You have a preloaded data. You have some storage already. Some data is there in that folder. From outside process, you have loaded the data, but your pod should just read the data. Your pod cannot modify the data. In that case, can I go for read only values? My pod doesn't want to write any data to there. It can just read. Then can I go for a read only values? If you have that use case, you don't want to your pod to write any data there, but pod can just read the data whatever is already available. In that case, you can go for that value. As I told, the persistent value can be created using this value. The persistent value can be NFS. That persistent value can be EBS. That persistent value can be Azure disk based on your infrastructure. But does all these access modes will be supported by all these values? Can I create a EBS with these two access mode? Does EBS supports this? Does EBS supports? You already know AWS. Can we attach EBS to the multiple nodes, multiple to the servers simultaneously? No. So EBS supports what type of access mode? EBS is supported by what type of access mode only? Read write once. But if I go for a NFS or EFS, NFS or EFS, we already discussed in AWS. Can we mount EFS or NFS with multiple servers, multiple nodes simultaneously? In that case, is it going to support this one also? Read write once, read only many. If you want, you can create with read write once also. Right? So if you see the way we have access modes, can you see what volume will be supported, what type of access mode? If you see, does EBS supports these things? Recently they have introduced read write once pod, read write once pod, but that is not going to be supported in all the versions of Kubernetes. They have recently introduced this read write once pod access mode, but it is not going to work in all the Kubernetes clusters in all the versions. It needs to have specific Kubernetes versions. Okay. Now if you see, does EBS supports this read only many, read write many, all these things? The you see the check mark here. What EBS supports? Only read write once. If you see Azure file is like a EFS in AWS. In AWS you have a EFS. In Azure there is a service called Azure file. So does Azure file supports all these things? Yes. Now if you see NFS, does NFS also supports all these things? So based on your use case, you can create a claim. Now here, I'm just mentioning the claim name. Do I need to mention what type of access mode I am looking for this value and how much size, what is the capacity of value I am looking? Do I need to create a claim by by mentioning all those details? Without, if I just create a claim with this name, if I'm just having like this, if I try to apply this, will it work? Will it work? Let me show that. Now if you see why my database pod is in pending state, what could be the reason? My database pod is in pending state. What could be the reason? If you describe your pod, if you describe your pod, kubectl describe. If you see what it is trying to say, guys, what it is trying to say, what it is not able to find, persistent value claim. Claim itself is not there because I'm using volumes. What type of volumes I was trying to use here? The volume type. I am referring what? Persistent volume claim. But did I mention, did I created a PVC with that name? Do I have a PVC with that name first of all? Do you see PVC, persistent volume claim? No. So who will create this persistent value? Does admin will create? the guy who is creating that application, the guy who is deploying that application, do they need to mention how much storage they need, what type of storage they need as per their requirements? So they have to create a claim also, that claim object like this. So again, API version, kind, metadata, something like this. So what kind of object they want to create? So they're referring a claim here. So the kind will be what? Persistent value claim. So what is the API version for persistent value claim? It's basically V1. Name, the PVC name. So the PVC name. So whatever name here, the claim name, do I need to create a PVC with that name? This PVC object with that name, whatever they're referring here, do they need to create like this? They're going to have like this. Now, in same namespace, whatever namespace they are trying to deploy this pod in the same namespace. So in the default namespace, they are creating a claim. Now under spec, do they need to mention access modes, what type of volume they need, how much storage they need? Under this claim spec, do they need to mention something like this? Claim, something like this. So they are going to create that PVC object like this. How much volume they need, right? Persistent volume claim, they are going to mention something like this. How much volume they need, what type of access mode they need, like this. Access mode. So what type of access mode? So based on their requirement. Suppose if their requirement is read write once, which means they are using only one replica, they're using only one replica, they're creating only one pod, and they are looking only for that pod, right? Only one read write once. The way they have a read write once, and also capacity, capacity, like this, capacity. So if I say something like this, what does it mean? How much storage they are looking, how much storage they are looking? If I say something like this, how much storage they are looking? 1 GB. Now I can mention the storage class also. Suppose I can mention one more object here, storage class name. But as of now, do I have any storage class which can create this PVC for us? I can mention the storage class. Do I have any storage class configured? Even though if I mention something like this, does it expect storage class with this name configured? Suppose if I say storage class like this, AWS Elastic Block Store or AWS EBS storage, does it going to expect the storage class with this name configured in my Kubernetes cluster? If I have this storage class already configured, even though volume is not available for this claim, does this storage class will create the volume for this claim if this storage class exists in my Kubernetes cluster? If the storage class is available, even though volume is not there, Does this storage class will create a value for this claim? Understand, it is little linked with each other. I will not say more complex. One thing is linked with other. Now I am creating a claim. I am creating a claim. If there is no volume available, does this claim will get any volume, guys? First, understand. I am creating a claim. There is no volume available. Does this claim will get any volume? No. But if I have a storage class configured, if I mention that storage class name here like this, if I have this storage class, then does this storage class will create a value for this claim with this requirement? Yes. But as of now, do I have any storage class? As of now, do I have any storage class? Do I have any storage class? Is there any storage class configured in this cluster? No. Storage class, dynamic values. So let me mention something like this. Let me comment, because I don't have any storage class, or let me delete. That is fine. Now I'm just creating a claim, but I don't have any volumes available. I don't have any volumes available. I don't have any volumes available. And also, do I have any storage class configured? As I already told, this is self-managed Kubernetes cluster. Do I have any storage class? No. Now I am just creating a PVC. Now I am just creating a PVC now. Does that PVC will get any value? Does that PVC will get any value? Now PVC got created. Persistent volume got created. Now I have a persistent volume claim. I have a persistent volume claim. Why my pod is still pending even though I created a claim? Why my pod is still pending even though I created a claim? I have a PVC. Now PVC is there. PVC is waiting for what? PVC is pending. PVC is pending for what? PVC is pending for value. Why volumes are not automatically created for this claim? Why volumes are not automatically created for this claim? There is no storage class, and also there is no storage class. We have not created a storage class, and we have not set the storage class as any default storage class. Do we have a storage class which can create a volumes dynamically? No, right? So in that case, as a Kubernetes admin, do I need to create the volumes? Suppose this application team says that my volume is, my pod is in pending state. In that case, if I don't have a storage class, do I need to create a value for them, for that application manually in the cluster? Yes. Now I can create a volume of any type. I can create a persistent volume of EBS, or persistent volume of NFS, or persistent volume of host path based on your infrastructure. Based on your infrastructure, you can create a persistent value like this manually. You can create a persistent value of host path, or NFS like this. I can create a persistent value of NFS host path based on your use case, right? Based on your something like this. So I can create one YML. I can create one YML, something like this. Persistent value I can say access mode, NFS server, path, all those things. I can create a value like this manually. So NFS server. Do I already have a NFS server? Do I already have a NFS server? Yesterday we created NFS server. Can I use that NFS server here? The path, whatever NFS server path I have. So I have NFS server. If I want to create a NFS value, I can say something like this, mnt slash, what is the folder guys? I think NFS underscore share, right? Now I'm saying storage as, let's say, 1 GB only, storage as 1 GB only with this access mode. Even though I create this persistent value, does the claim will get associated with this value, guys? Does claim will get associated with this value, even though I create this value now? You understand? In the interview also they'll ask this question, how claims will be associated with values. Now this is my claim. This is my claim. Someone is requesting with this access mode, this much capacity, they are looking for a value. If I create a value like this, does this value will be allocated for this claim? If you see how claims will get associated with values, on what basis? This is one interview question in Kubernetes. If they are expecting an advanced Kubernetes resource, this is one interview question. How values gets associated with claims, or claims associated with values, based on access mode, based on capacity, based on the access mode, based on the capacity, based on the storage class. So did I mention any storage class name here? No. Here also I have not mentioned because I am manually creating. It will compare capacity and access mode. I am creating a volume with 1 GB capacity, and how much they are requesting, how much they are expecting. Claim is expecting how much? 1 GB. And I am creating volume with 1 GB. Is it matching? Is it matching? Yes. Even though I do like this, is it going to work? Even though the claim is requesting 500 MB, I am creating with 1 GB. Will it work? Will it match? Yes, it works. But they are looking for read write once access mode, but volume is created with what access mode? Read write many. In that case, even though I create this value, does that claim, whatever is in pending state, will it able to get that value? This claim is in pending state. Even though I create this value in my cluster, even though I create this value in my cluster like this, even though I create a value as an admin, even though I have a PV now, why PVC is still pending? Why why it is still available? This PV is still available, but this PVC is waiting for PV. Why it is not able to claim this one? Because of the expectation and actual. I am expecting read write once access mode, but the volume is available. The volume is available with read write many access mode. So I can create values based on manual, right? So let me create another value that can be any type. That can be any type, right? This name doesn't matter. This name, volume name doesn't matter. The claim is going to get the volume based on these things. Now I am creating like this, read write once, let's say instead of NFS, that can be anything. Host path, let's say in host path, any directory, host path, let's say something like this. Now I am going to create this value. Now, if this is matching with that expectation, is this value will be automatically allocated now? Is this value, whatever I am going to create now, is that will be allocated for that claim, whatever which was pending, if the expectation matches? Now, if you see, do you see already the PVC is that gets bounded with that volume, whatever volume I created now? Already you see, it gets bounded with this value. Now, since that volume is bounded, I can see the volume also now. Do you see this volume? Is it bounded with that claim? The host path volume, whatever I created with read write once access mode, 1 GB capacity, is it mounted with this one? Yes. Now, is my pod will be running now? Is my pod will be running now because the claim got value? Do you see? Is pod is scheduled now? Is pod is, I mean to say, running now? Since the claim, whatever was waiting, got a value, do you see pod is scheduled now? Yes. So this one is what type of value, whatever I have done. This one, what type of values? Is this dynamic values? Is someone automatically created these values? Or we created these values manually as an admin? We created as an admin. So this is what type of values, guys? Manual values. What is the meaning of dynamic values? Suppose someone requesting a PVC, if they don't find any value, does this value should be automatically created? Whatever value it is expecting with that specification, if the value will automatically created, that is what called as a dynamic value. But now, why values are not created? My volume claim was pending for so long. Why no one has created that volume automatically? Because who takes care of that responsibility of creating a volumes dynamically? Who takes care of that responsibility of creating a volumes dynamically? Storage class. Do I have any storage class configured in this cluster? Did I created any storage class in this cluster? No. So that's why volumes are not created automatically. Now I have a one more volume now. If someone requested claim with this type of access mode with this much capacity, if there someone is claiming again, does this volume will be allocated for that pod? If some other application is requesting read write read write many access mode, and if they are requesting with 1 GB or less capacity, does this volume will be allocated for them now? That is still available. This value. So it will be allocated, right? So this is static values. Now what is dynamic value? As I already told, we need to have a storage class configured. Give me 1 minute, guys. I'll be back. We will continue with the dynamic storage. Give me 1 minute. I'll be back. Okay, guys, I'll continue. So I will explain this. Just wait for some time. What is this reclaim policy? I will explain. So we have a reclaim policies also. The way we have a access modes, we have a reclaim policies. So what is that reclaim policy? I will explain in some time. We have a retain, we have recycle, we have delete. What is this reclaim policy? I will cover in some time. Now let's try to understand dynamic value. I don't want to manually create the values. I want to dynamically create the values. In that case, do I need to configure some storage class based on the underlying infrastructure? Now, if I am running my Kubernetes cluster on my own data center, can I configure a Azure, I mean to say Azure storage classes or AWS storage classes like EBS if my applications are running in my own data center servers? If my applications are running in my own data center servers, right? It has to support that infrastructure. Your cluster should support all those authentication, authorization, network connectivity, all those stuff, right? So Azure, this I mean to say EBS. Can I attach EBS to the normal data center servers instead of EC2 servers? Can I able to attach EBS with normal data center servers? No. EBS is only available for EC2. So if I create a Kubernetes cluster in my own data center, can I use EBS storage class? Can I configure EBS storage class in my self-managed data center cluster? No. In that case, I have to look for some other storages. Like if you are from a storage background, if you have a storage background, there are a lot of storage services. Shep. Is anyone from storage background here? Anyone from storage background? I am also not from storage background. I never worked on the storage solutions. Anyone from storage background here? Storage administrators, in-house storage services. Like we have a Shep, we have a Portvax, right? Gluster FS. We can set up your own SaaS. You can set up your own SAN, storage area network, in your own data center. So if you have those storage area networks configured in your own data center, you can use respective plugins, respective providers in that cluster. Otherwise, if I have NFS, can I set up NFS storage class, NFS provisioner in my data center cluster? We can set up a NFS provisioner. Now, let me demonstrate NFS provisioner. We are going to deploy one NFS provisioner. That provisioner is nothing but what, guys? As I already told, that is some code, some application, some logic. Plugins, in the simple terms, I call it as a plugin. Plugin is nothing but what in the background, guys? Whatever plugin, that can be whatever plugin you are using, Jenkins, that you are using some plugin in Docker, or you are using some plugin in Kubernetes. That can be any type of plugin. That plugin is nothing but what in the background? That's a code. That code will dynamically create and manage something. So this storage class or this provisioner is nothing but code, some piece of code, some piece of code. That code will create a value for us. Instead of I create this object, instead of I create and apply this object, instead of I create and apply this object, who does this for me? Who does this for me? Who create this object and apply in my Kubernetes cluster? If I have a storage class, the storage class will dynamically create a persistent values, and it will work with the respective provider to create a storage there. It is going to create a storage there, and it is going to create a persistent value, that storage class automatically. Okay. Now I have some code to deploy that storage class. That storage class is also one Kubernetes resource. One Kubernetes resource. So that storage class is also kind of a Kubernetes resource. Let me show you this. So here I'm coming from the last. What I'm trying to create, guys, I'm going to deploy this one. I'm going to apply this one in my cluster. What kind of object I'm trying to create now? If you see, what kind of object I'm trying to create now? Storage class. This is the API version for storage class. If you see kubectl API resources, do we have a storage class as one Kubernetes object, Kubernetes resource storage class? The API version is this. In the short form, what is that? SC, storage class. So we already created persistent volume claims. Do you see those things also here? Where is that? Persistent. Here. Somewhere I saw. Again, I missed. Here. So do we see these persistent volume claims also as a Kubernetes resources, which we already discussed. Now, I'm creating a storage class now. I'm creating a storage class. This is my storage class name. If you observe, am I deploying one application using some image? If you see, this is my storage class name. With this name, am I deploying one application? I mean to say one Docker image. So what this image has? This image has a logic to create that volume dynamically. Kind of a plugin. This is kind of a plugin. Now, this storage class, this application has to create the volumes automatically. Does this application require access to the Kubernetes APIs to create the volumes dynamically, to delete the volumes dynamically? Kubernetes permissions. If you see, for that one, am I creating a service account? And if you see, am I creating a permissions for persistent volumes, get permissions, watch permissions, create permissions, delete permissions for persistent volumes. Persistent volume claims, I'm giving get, update, list, watch. We are creating a service account. We are creating a role. We are binding that role, and we are using that service account in our provisioner, this application. So if I deploy this one, is it going to create a volumes that PV, NFS type PVs automatically? If someone is requesting a claim, is this going to be created a PV automatically? Yes. Now here, before apply, do I need to modify my NFS server IP here as well as here? There are two places you need to modify your NFS server details. One is here, another one is here. Now, let me take my NFS server IP. Let me take this NFS server IP. Here as well as here, two places. And is my NFS path is correct? Whatever I have shared in my NFS server, is this correct? As per our yesterday installation? No. It was, I think, NFS underscore share, correct? Here as well as here. Two places. Update your IP also at two places, here as well as here. This also here as well as here. Now, I am configuring this as a default storage class. Even though the storage class is this name, I am configuring this as a default storage class, which means I am creating a storage class. I am marking this as a default storage class. In that case, if someone created a claim, if someone just created a claim, if the volume is not available, will it be created the volume by that storage class? Suppose someone is just requesting like this. They have not mentioned the storage class and there is no volume also available. There is no volume also available. They have not mentioned the storage class also. Since I am marking this as a default storage class, then does this storage class will create a volume for this claim if someone is requesting like this? Since I am marking as a default storage class, if some claim is just requesting a value without mentioning any storage class name, does this storage class will create a value because I am marking this as a default storage class? Understand the concept here. I am creating, someone is creating a claim, they have not mentioned any storage class name and volume is also not available. Whatever storage class is configured as a default, does the volume will be created by that storage class? Yes, right? Because this is marked as a default storage class. So if the volume is not available for this claim, this storage class will create the volume for that claim. That is the meaning of default. If this is not marked as default, then do I need to explicitly mention like this in my claim? Do I need to explicitly mention like this storage class name like this? If this is not marked as default storage class, in that case, do I need to mention something like this? From which storage class it can create? Yes, that is how it works. Now, I have updated all these things, right? My IP address and all. Now, let me deploy this NFS provisioner. This configuring the storage class, is it needs to be done each and every time for whatever application I need a volume? Do I need to configure this storage class for each and every time, or it's a one-time activity for admin? Do I need to configure this storage class for each and every time I am going to create a volumes or claims, or it's a one-time activity? Is it one-time setup? It's just one-time setup only, guys. Okay. So once the storage class is there, can I create a claims? Then the storage class can create a volumes based on the provisioner it is using. Yes. Now let me apply that storage class. Now, do I have a storage class? Do I have a storage class now? Do I have a storage class now? Now, what is this within the bracket? It is showing default, which means, is this configured as a default storage class? Now, let me show that. Let me delete everything. And also you observe, guys, one more thing. Even though I'm deleting a pods, is the volumes and volume claims got deleted? Whatever I created, whether it's a manually or automatically, these volumes are created, that doesn't matter. Even though I deleted that pods and deployments completely, do we still have a volumes intact to our cluster? Yes. Now, someone was asking, what is this reclaim policies? What is this reclaim policies? We have three types of reclaim policies: retain, recycle, delete. If the reclaim policy is retain, whenever I delete the PVC, is it going to delete the associated underlying storage, the associated underlying physical disk and the data? If I delete this PVC is associated with this PV. If the reclaim policy is retain, even though I delete this claim, is it going to delete this value? If it is retain, it is not going to delete this value. But if the reclaim policy is delete, when I delete the PVC, this PVC is associated with this value. If the reclaim policy is delete, if I delete this PVC, does the associated value and data, will it be deleted? Will that value will be deleted? If it is delete, the reclaim policy is delete. It will be deleted. There is one more concept called recycle. Now, what is my reclaim policy, guys? What is my reclaim policy for this one? Retain. Now I am deleting this claim. One more important thing. Can I delete a claim if that claim is used by some pod? Now I am trying to delete this claim. Will I able to delete this claim if this claim is used by some pod? Again, no. But now I have deleted that application completely. I have deleted that application completely. Now can I delete this claim? Can I delete this claim? Because I deleted that application completely. Can I delete this claim? Yes. Now I am deleting this claim, but if you see, is the associated value, is it deleted or it is still there? The associated PV, is it still there? It's still there. Now you see status as released. Status as released. Even though it is released, can some other claim can get this value? Can some other claim can get this value? No. No. Because the data is still there. The data is still there. You cannot claim this value again. But instead of retain, if it is a recycle, what will happen? You know, when I delete this claim, it is going to delete the data also in that storage. It is like it is going to execute rm-rf within that storage. When I delete the claim, the value will be there, but will it delete the data? If the reclaim policy is recycle, value will be there, but it is going to delete the data inside that value, so that that value will be available for another claim, another pod. If the reclaim policy is delete, as I already told, if the reclaim policy is delete, if I delete PVC, does that value and its data both will be deleted? If the reclaim policy is delete, if I delete the PVC, it is going to delete everything. Is everyone clear, guys? What is this reclaim policies? What is retain? What is recycle? What is delete? Sometimes in the interview they are going to ask this question also. What is reclaim policies? What is access modes? All those stuff. Now, let me delete these volumes also now. Whatever I have created manually. Where can I mention these reclaim policies? We can set this while creating a PVC. While creating a PVC, we can set this reclaim policies. Now, I don't have any volumes now. I don't have any claims also now. Now I am deploying same application. I'm just creating a PVC. Now, am I going to get the PV automatically? Does my pod goes to pending state now? Even though I don't have a value, does my pod goes to pending state? Or since we have a storage class, Since we have a storage class, does this storage class will create the value for us? We have a storage class. This storage class will create the value for us, right? If you see, do I have any value available as of now? No. Now let me apply this. I'm just mentioning. So I just created a claim along with my deployment. I just created a claim. Now if you see, who created this value? I have not created value manually. It is going to created by the storage class, right? Now any other application, let's say I want to deploy Jenkins. I want to run Jenkins or some other application also. That also requires a value. In that case, can I just create a PVC? In that case, can I just create a PVC so that value also will get created automatically? Now, I want to run this application. Let's say I want to deploy, I want to run Jenkins also in Kubernetes or some other application. I need a value. Can I create a claim for that application and deploy? Suppose I want to run this Jenkins. I want to run Jenkins also in my Kubernetes cluster. Now, can I run this application by using persistent values concept? Something like this. Now, is it mandatory to create a values manually? Now, since I have a storage class, now I'm just creating like this. That can be deployment or that can be anything. Now, for this image, I'm creating a container, Jenkins container. I'm creating a Jenkins deployment, something like this. Now, if I don't use values for Jenkins, if the Jenkins part is deleted and recreated, do you able to see the existing data, existing jobs, configurations, whatever you have done? No. In that case, do I need to use values for this one also? So here, value mounts, name, I can say something like this, Jenkins, something. Now here, I don't want to directly use something like this. Can I go with this persistent value? Persistent value claim claim name, right? Claim name, something like this. Jenkins PVC. Now, sorry, not here, guys. Here it is mount path. Not here. It is mount path, value mounts, right? It's a mount path. So mount path. To which path? In case of Jenkins, what is the important directory I want to mount? The mount path. If you see this image, You can understand what is the important directory. What is the important directory? If you see, if you read about this documentation, if it is an image, it is not varlib jenkins. It is not varlib jenkins, guys. Basically, this is your jenkins home directory is this one, not varlib jenkins. This is var underscore jenkins underscore home. So this is my mount path. This is my mount path, something like this. Here I need to give mount path. Now, do I need to mention volumes now? Volumes, the way I have mounted, I will say volumes. Now name, whatever I was using here. Now here, can I mention that persistent volume claim? Persistent volume claim, claim name. Claim name, I can say something like this. Now, as per my requirement, do I need to create that claim object also? Do I need to create this claim object also as per my requirement? How much storage I need? What type of access mode I need? Something like this. So I say I need, let's say, 1 GB volume mode, access mode. Volume mode basically file system, right? This is default one, read write one, something like this. Now I am just creating a PVC. Does volume will be created for this PVC also now automatically, since I have a storage class? Since I have a storage class, does the volume will be created for this claim automatically? Yes. Now, if you want to access this application from outside, this Jenkins you want to access, do I need to create a service also? Service. If you want to access from outside, what type of service? If you want to access from outside, node port. Now, if I apply this manifest file now, is it going to create a volume also automatically for that claim? I'm just creating a PVC. I'm just creating a PVC. Now, is it going to create a volume also for that? Now, let's see. Now, if you see, who created this volume? This volume. Who created this volume? The second volume. I just created this PVC. I just created this PVC. It is created that volume. Now, is my Jenkins pod? Is my Jenkins pod is using that volume? Now, if I go and see, if I go and see in my NFS server, if I go and see in my NFS server, let me log into my NFS server. If I go and see in my NFS server, if you see, what is this folder? What is this folder? What is there inside this folder? Under this mnt nfs underscore, again it has created one folder. Again it has created one folder. This storage is mounted with which pod? This default Jenkins PVC. The naming standard you can see, namespace name, your PVC name, some random number. So this directory is mounted with which one? Is that directory within this NFS, in this directory, is it mounted with your Jenkins pod? That value. This is mounted with another pod. Now, am I creating a values manually, guys? Now, no. Now, here, since I'm using NFS, since I'm using NFS, since I'm using NFS, does it need to have enough storage in my NFS? Does provisioner will manage NFS server? The provisioner is just creating a value, but is it maintaining the capacity of your NFS server? Is it going to increase and decrease the NFS server storage capacity? No. But instead of NFS, if I am going for EFS storage class or EBS storage class, right? Is the storage will be created in the cloud? Can we expand the storage if required in the cloud? Can I change the capacity in the storage in the cloud? So in the cloud storage, right, the storage is also dynamic, right? Now, if I go for a EKS cluster, what type of storage class will be configured by default? I no need to manually configure storage class. The elastic block store, EBS. EBS will be available by default. So you no need to configure the storage class manually if I go for a managed Kubernetes cluster. Volumes also very important, guys, for a stateful applications. Now, if you see, when I go for a storage class, what is the default reclaim policy, guys? What is the default reclaim policy? What is the default reclaim policy? Delete. Why? Because in the storage, in the cloud, if you don't want your volume to be available, you are deleting your application and you are deleting this PVC also. In the cloud also, does the storage will be deleted automatically? If you are deleting your application completely from the cluster, you don't want that application available in your cluster. In that case, you don't want the data also. You don't need the data also completely. In that case, if I delete the PVC, is it going to delete the storage also? I mean to say in the PV also, the storage also, the real storage in the cloud? Yes. That is how it works. Volumes also very important, guys. I covered in and out of volumes, manual volumes, static volumes, I mean to say dynamic volumes, what is reclaim policies, what is access modes, how it works. Very important. Do you have any questions on these volumes, whatever we discussed? Okay. Nihar is asking, EKS will have a EBS as a storage class, only read write once. There is no read only once. There is no access mode called read only once. We have only read write once, read write many, read only many. If you need read write once or read write many, in that case, you have to go for a shared file system like EFS or NFS. But most of the cases, right, you will go for a read only once, I mean to say read write once kind of a storage. Now, this storage class, do I need to manually create this storage class? Do I need to manually create this storage class when I go for a managed Kubernetes cluster? Do I need to manually apply all these things? Who will create that provisioner by default? The AWS will create provisioner by default. AWS, that EKS cluster itself will create the provisioner by default. You no need to manually do this. Just to demonstrate NFS provisioner, I am manually using this. But in real time, are you going to create a storage class like this? If you are using AKS, EKS, or GKE, no. That comes by default in your cluster. that comes by default in your cluster. Okay. Any questions? Any queries before I start the session for today? Guys, go through this recording at least 2-3 times. Go through this recording, especially this session 2-3 times. Then only you can understand what is PV, what is PVC, what is storage class, what is access modes, and all those stuff. So that's true. Nihar is saying it is going to be a very challenging job if I want to manage the cluster on my own. So that's why instead of you are struggling to set up the cluster and manage the cluster, can I let someone to manage the cluster so that I can only focus on my deployments? How can I deploy my application? I can just focus on deployments and managing my data. I let someone else to manage. I am least bothered. That is what cloud. That is what cloud. You no need to bother about how to set up the cluster, how to provision the storage, how to provision the servers, how to provision the networks, how to provision the load balancers. You least bother. You don't, that will be managed by provider. You can just focus on your deployments. So what is EKS? How to set up the EKS? We will continue in a separate session. So what is the role of administrator? What is the role of administrator? Kubernetes administrator. You are responsible for administrative task. What is the meaning of administrative task? Are you responsible for creating namespaces, allocating quota, setting how much CPU, how much memory can that namespace can be consumed, right? You are responsible for giving the permissions to the teams. What permissions on each namespace for each team, what that team can do in that namespace, what the team can do in the cluster. And also you are responsible for setting up the clusters. Suppose you are administrator, if you want to set up the cluster, you have to set up the cluster. That can be either self-managed or managed. If it is a managed, I need to go and create a cluster in AWS. So administrator is kind of all administrative tasks like managing the cluster, upgrading the cluster, managing resources to the cluster, right? Managing permissions to your cluster, deploying applications also in the cluster sometimes, all those stuff. CKAD, CKAD is basically developer perspective. Developer perspective. Developer perspective in the sense, it is very simple. How to deploy, deployment part. Like they want to know only like what is deployment, what is service. If I want to deploy my application, how to create a deployment, how to create a service, how to create a PVC, all those stuff. Only developmental activities. Developmental activities, which doesn't mean they need to learn Go language, right? Go language, guys. No, no. CKAD is only from a developer perspective. If I want to deploy one application in Kubernetes, what it takes, what are the Kubernetes resources we have? You need to know what is pod, what is deployment, what is service, what is configmap. How can I use all these things to deploy my application? Development perspective. It is not like you are going to develop something in Kubernetes. From a developer standpoint, how you can deploy your application in the cluster. CKAD is what? CKA is what? CK is administration. administration, complete additional logic, right? Like our responsibility is from installation also. Installation, upgrade of clusters, permissions, managing the permissions to the clusters, who can do what within a Kubernetes cluster, seek RBAC, right? Installing the cluster, setting up the cluster, upgrading the cluster, sometimes deploying the application also, deployments in cluster, troubleshooting, troubleshooting, debugging the applications running in a cluster. It can be either you can DevOps engineer either can be in this perspective also they can do the work, in this perspective also you can do the work. And again, is it mandatory to have a certification? Again, is it mandatory to have a certification? No, it is not mandatory, but it's good to have. It's good to have. Now, after this course, which one I can go for? Whether I can go for a CKAD, CKA, you can go for a CKA directly. But you need to have a more hands-on, guys. It is not like a multiple choice question. They are not going to ask multiple choice. It is like a scenario. They will say, create a pod, with the Nginx image, something like this, and expose that pod using node port. They will say, create a pod using PVC and mount values to the pod. They are going to give some kind of a use case. They are going to give some kind of a question. In this case, if you don't know what is pod, how to expose that pod, if you don't know how to create a pods or how to create a deployments, then will you able to clear the exam? If you don't practice more, if you don't know what is pod, what is service, what is deployment, what is volume, what is RBAC, you have to know the concept, and also you should be more hands-on. You should be able to create very fast. More hands-on is required when you go for a CK, AD or CKA, whatever it is. So CK is good, and again it is not mandatory. It is good, but it is not mandatory. You can appear, lot of our students clear the CKA exam after our course, but they have done a lot of labs. I mean to say lot of practice. Lot of hands-on has to be done. Now they are going to give 2 attempts, guys. 2 attempts. Which means even though you are not able to clear in the first attempt, even though the first attempt is failed, you can go for a second attempt. You can go for a second attempt. After some time, again you can appear one more time. The charges, I think now somewhere around $350, $350 only for certification. Will the exam have templates, or should we write everything on own? The clusters will be pre-configured. They will have a lab environment. They have a lab environment. Clusters will be pre-configured. So you need to write the manifest. You need to execute the commands on your own. But you no need to set up the cluster from beginning. Clusters will be there. You just need to execute, troubleshoot, and all those stuff. But as I already told, can I refer the official documentation during the exam? Can I refer this official documentation during the exam? Yes. We can refer this official documentation. But without knowing the concept, without knowing the terminologies, will you able to quickly search and take these references? First of all, you need to be familiar with the terminologies, concepts. Suppose they ask me some question on pod. I can quickly go and search pod. But again, can you completely depend on this searching and writing the exam? Because there is a time limit. There is a time limit. You cannot, everything you cannot go and refer the official documentation and write the exam. Okay. So this is accessible during the exam. You can refer. Yes, now offer is going on, guys. Offer is going on. In the Linux Foundation, I think in the Linux Foundation, there is offer going on till December 16th. Till December 16th, there is offer going on. I think they are giving for 180 or something, $100 or something. Certification catalog, right? So if you see, there is a coupon. You can apply that coupon also. So CKA, right? You no need to go for this bundles. You no need to go for this bundles. Just you can go for an exam only. Just exam only. So you can search this catalog. I think somewhere around $180 they're offering. Okay. Any other questions related to the certification? Since we got this topic today. Guys, whether forget about whether you are 1 year experienced, whether you are 10 years experienced, they are going to expect at least some minimal knowledge, right? Suppose I am just 1 year experienced, but from day one I am completely working on Kubernetes. Will I have a complete knowledge on that? So if you have 1 year experience, 2 year experience, that doesn't matter. Your skill set, the more subject you know, the more subject you have, they are going to there are going to be a lot of opportunities, lot of packages based on your technical skills. It's not matter of experience, right? So the more tools you have, more website you have, then it will be plenty of opportunities and good packages, right? But with our training, guys, especially Docker and Kubernetes, right? You can answer any question or whatever question they ask in the interview if you practiced all those things, whatever I am discussing. So Kubernetes and Docker, right? You can answer any question. Okay. Lot of our Mithun technology students are cracking the jobs because of the topics, because of the content which we are teaching in the training center. It is not like simply our students are getting the job. We are covering in and out of the tools so that you will be able to answer any question in the interview, and also you should be able to manage your work in the interview also. I mean to say your actual work also. You don't need any help. You don't need any support. If you had practiced, if you would have attended all the sessions. Okay, okay guys, thank you. It's already too late, 7:50. I'll continue tomorrow. Tomorrow also we have a class, guys. I'll continue tomorrow with what is config map, what is secrets, and what is liveness probe, readiness probe. Once that is done, I will explain stateful set. So tomorrow also we will have a class. I'll continue tomorrow. So how many classes are there? Today is of 10th day. Kubernetes, how many classes are done? Today is 10 or 11? I think 10, not sure. 11. There might be another 10 to 11 classes. there might be another 10 to 11 classes. There might be another 10 to 11 classes. We have a lot of other topics to be discussed. Okay, like what is ingress controller, RBAC, Helm, Prometheus, Grafana. So it will take another 10 days, guys. Okay, then. Thank you. I'll see you tomorrow, guys. Try to practice. Whatever we are discussing, that doesn't matter. How much you are taking from our training, how much you are taking, how much effort you are putting, that is most important. And I am here to support you. I am here to support you whenever you are getting any issues while practicing, whenever you are having some issue in understanding. I am here to support you during this program. But if you don't practice now, you will come back after 3 months, 4 months. I may not be available for you, and you will also lose the interest. You will lose the interest, and I may also not available dedicatedly for your batch, because I might be busy with some other trainings, my personal works. So when classes are going on, try to utilize the sessions more efficiently. Practice, come up with the questions, so that I'm happy to assist you. Thank you. See you tomorrow, same time. I will start 7:45. I will start from 7:45. Let's see. I'll try to wrap up by 9:15 or 9:20. Thank you, guys.